You basically need to prove that you don't need this job and you're willing to work for no money in order to even be considered for the job. 5 meetings, 5 interview rounds is not just 5 days that you spend interviewing. You have to buy outfits. You have to research the role. You have to basically do this for 2 weeks in order to then be told, no, we're going with someone else.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our September video essay here at The Financial Diet, where we are once again talking about stuff that's happening in our economy that you might be wondering about. And if there is one topic that we get asked about quite a bit on this channel, it is the job market, or rather in some ways, the lack thereof. Because we may not be certified financial planners here at TFD, but we are certified financial vibes readers.
They voted yes. Now we're gonna get our food sent to all the schools. We're gonna make zillions!
And the vibes in the job market are not good and getting worse. Because as anyone who has recently had to look for a job will tell you, things are harder out there than ever, and that is not just a perception. There are a few current factors that are making it almost impossible, especially for younger, more entry-level workers, to find jobs. And on that front, the most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs report speaks for itself. According to CNN, quote, "The US job market slowed sharply in July and was substantially weaker than first estimated for prior months, suggesting that the current administration's trade policy may be stifling hiring. The US economy added just 73,000 jobs last month, and the monthly totals for May and June were revised down by a combined 258,000 jobs. The prior 2 months' revisions were stunning," said Diane Swank, chief economist at KPMG, in an interview with CNN. May's estimated 144,000 net gain was revised down by 125,000 to just 19,000, and June's preliminary tally of 147,000 was slashed by 133,000 to just 14,000, according to data released Friday. With those monumental 250,000 job downward revisions, the meager job gains in June were the weakest since December 2020, the last time the labor market had monthly job losses. The pace of job creation seen so far this year is the weakest in decades outside of recessions. Now, we touched on the job market in a video last year that was very popular with our viewers, and I'll throw to myself for the commentary that we had on the subject at the time. You probably know that it feels really hard to find a job right now. And yet the narrative we've all been hearing in the news and the media about our economy, and especially the job market, has basically been the opposite. If you can't find a job, that's a you problem. Things are great and they've never been better. There's ample evidence on the ground that this great economy we're hearing about so much is not being enjoyed by the people who actually need it. Quote, "But active job seekers say that the labor market feels more difficult than ever." A 2023 survey from staffing agency Insight Global found that recently unemployed full-time workers had applied to an average of 30 jobs, only to receive an average of 4 callbacks or responses. Between the news, radio, and politicians just talking about how the economy is so great because unemployment is low, and just hearing all that, I just want to scream from the rooftops. Then how come no one can find a job? Said Jenna Jackson, a 28-year-old former management consultant from Ardmore, Pennsylvania. She's been actively looking for a job since her layoff 4 months ago. And it's worth noting that the job market indicators are substantially worse now than when we made that video. And yet, as is often the case, other market factors when we look at economic news have actually been good since the beginning of the year, which creates this incredible cognitive dissonance between what we're actually experiencing on the ground and what we hear is the case in the news.
To hear a first-hand account of the realities of looking for a job in this market, we spoke with Sabrina Ryan, writer and friend of TFD.
I've been looking really hard for a job to escape the freelance circuit for the last 8 months. And it has been incredibly difficult. Every single month has been its own frustrating disappointments. And I will say, I was so validated when I saw that jobs report and its dismal findings, because it was a great way to point to people who have jobs or who are out of the job market exactly what we're dealing with, which is insurmountable odds.
And as it pertains to jobs, this disconnect is not just something that we're feeling emotionally, it is economic and systemic between fake job postings, quote, remote work opportunity tech scams, phishing emails, and AI taking over the job search process. It is totally understandable to feel like the days of just finding a job are behind us. Basically, it is not in your head. If you feel like it is impossible right now to get a job, there are many reasons why that is actually true. And what we'll do in this video is break down what is happening, why that is the case, and the specific things that we can do to get around them. But before we get into this month's video essay, here is a quick word from this video's sponsor, Betterment. Now that we are finally getting into fall, I know that a lot of you guys are probably thinking about the money goals you had all the way back at the beginning of the year, some of which may have been derailed by the summer. But let this be your reminder that any money progress is better than no money progress at all. And if you've been putting off investing because it feels too overwhelming, Betterment is here to help. When investing your money starts to feel like a second job, Betterment steps in with a little work-life balance. They make it easy and stress-free to start investing. And while they're doing things like building and managing your investments or tracking the market, you can focus on literally anything else, because building your wealth shouldn't feel like a second job. That's why Betterment's here to give you some work-life balance, so head to betterment.com/TFD or click the link in our description box and you can sign up in minutes. And here's a quick word from the other sponsor of this video essay, Monarch. At the end of the day, managing your money should not feel like a full-time job, but when it comes to everything from paying down debt, to investing, to checking your accounts, to paying your bills, sometimes it feels that way. And it can be even more complicated if you're combining finances with roommates or a partner or anyone else for that matter. And as someone who likes to make things easy on herself, that is why I have been a long-time user of money management apps and personally use Monarch. Those of you who've been following TFD know that for a very long time I used Mint, which sadly went away this year, and I was looking for a replacement, and genuinely Monarch is the best option that I found. It's super easy to use, really pretty to look at. There's tons of really good features for splitting your finances or splitting bills. It makes bill pay easy to pay, tracking net worth, paying down debt. All of those things feel extremely easy and intuitive on the app. Also, they're a really good company and we love working with them. There are also no ads and no selling your financial data to third parties, which is very important to me. Just a clean, secure app that makes finance feel simple. Monarch helps you manage money your way with flexible budgeting that's built for real life, custom categories, and a full view of all your accounts and transactions. You can see your accounts in one place, track your net worth, set financial goals, and budget in a way that actually fits your life. And Monarch was recently named the best Mint replacement by Forbes, and I honestly agree. Over 1 million people, including me, use Monarch, and if you want to give it a try, just head to monarchmoney.com/landing/TFD or just click the link in our description. And when you use code TFD, you'll get 50% off your first year. But before we dive into all of this, let's start with a look at what job seekers are actually experiencing right now with Chapter 1, Job Hunting, a dystopian beauty pageant. As anyone actively looking for a job will tell you, just the search process has become its own kind of hell in recent years, where even figuring out what jobs actually exist is nearly impossible. On the one hand, LinkedIn's easy apply job postings make it seem like there are plenty of opportunities there, but, and this is especially true for industries like mine, media, the process is much more elusive than simply clicking a few buttons and getting your resume in front of the right person. It can also often feel like a talent competition where charisma, branding, and optics matter much more than actual competence, qualification, or skill level.
The charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent monologues are made possible by contributions to your local drag race station from twisted viewers like you.
And let me tell you, as someone who's worked with quite a few creators over the years, talent and charisma are often useless when you are just impossible to work with. But this phenomenon, the need for basically every candidate to be a one-person self-branding machine, has made it so that well-qualified candidates are constantly overlooked for jobs they're qualified for because they just fail at the art of marketing themselves online.
You basically need to prove that you don't need this job and you're willing to work for no money in order to even be considered for the job. 5 meetings, 5 interview rounds is not just 5 days that you spend interviewing. You have to buy outfits. You have to research the role. You have to basically do this for 2 weeks in order to then be told, no, we're going with someone else. Even if they have other open positions, you're starting over. It's inhuman by design.
But anyway, let's take a look at the various dystopian steps involved in the job search process these days. First is the application phase itself, where according to industry data compiled by LifeShack, job seekers apply to 100 plus positions on average in order to secure just one offer. And landing a job when you need one obviously doesn't happen overnight. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median duration of unemployment as of July 2024 was around 5 months. 5 months, by the way, being a number which, according to all of you guys that we've spoken to about the job hunt, seems very low. C'est dur de trouver un job en France?
Ma compagne, elle aimerait bien quitter son job et faire autre chose, mais on sait pas trop.
D'accord. Et par exemple, tes amis qui cherchent un truc à temps plein, ça prend combien de temps environ?
J'ai pas trop d'amis. Soit ils sont dans leur job et ils veulent pas en bouger, soit ils sont indépendants. Et les seuls retours que j'ai de gens, ouais, c'est un peu la galère, quoi. C'est un peu la galère. C'est pas évident.
Ouais.
J'ai pas de timeline particulière, mais ouais, la personne la plus proche, ouais, c'est ma compagne. Et, ouais, c'est un peu la jungle, hein. C'est compliqué.
Ouais. Bon. Apparently the good news, guys, it's not better in France. And your resume is much less about showcasing talent and more about keyword optimization and figuring out ways to game the system. And actually, whether or not you get an interview depends on automated filtering. Almost all large companies use applicant tracking systems, ATS, which are responsible for rejecting or accepting resumes before a human ever sees them, which means if your application is not tailored to the screening algorithm, it simply won't even reach a human being. And guides online are even saying to rewrite your resume for every single job application, which, if we remember the fact that it takes roughly 100 of these applications to get one offer, means you are rewriting your resume approximately 100 times. And of course, once you finally do get an interview, if you get it, it may or may not even be conducted by a human. We'll talk more on that later. And the further the screening process goes, it might involve even more unpaid labor beyond all of the work you've already put into applying. This kind of work often involves assignments and multi-round interviews requiring free work, i.e. writing a marketing plan, designing a campaign, or coding a project. And it obviously makes sense that hiring for certain types of jobs would require candidates to prove they do indeed hold a certain skill set. Even at TFD, where many of our positions focus more on soft skills, we ask job candidates to complete an edit test, which, let me be very clear, we pay for our edit tests. Anytime we require any kind of work to apply for a job at TFD, that work is compensated. And it is crazy to me that as a teeny tiny company with not many resources, we do that, and so many big companies that are putting up record profits quarter over quarter are not paying for this. Although now that I'm saying it, it's probably due to the fact that they're not compensating so many people that they're putting up record profits for shareholders. There you go. And additionally, some employers have interview processes where candidates go through several rounds depending on the position and company, which means the hiring process from start to finish could take well over a month depending on the job. And then, of course, because looking for a job is basically the same as dating at this point, you have to deal with ghosting. A significant percentage of candidates never hear back from their prospective employer. Quote, roughly 48% of job seekers say that they were ghosted by an employer in the past year, compared to 38% who said they'd been ghosted the previous year, according to the 2025 Candidate Experience Report by Criteria Corps. And let's be very clear for how this feeds into the right-wing pipeline, at least as it pertains to women. When the job market is this dystopian, it is no surprise that content themed around things like the stay-at-home girlfriend or the trad wife become more and more popular, because it seems like essentially you are being expected to play a rigged game, which will then often, as we've discussed for women, result in them having to both work a full-time job and take on almost all of the labor at home. So the question becomes, why even do it? Why even bother? Why not just return to an era where men controlled 100% of our financial and personal outcomes? Is that a better way to go? Probably not, but I cannot blame these bitches for being tired, I'll say that.
Bobby, this isn't you. That's right, Joanna. This isn't me.
But as I mentioned, one of the things that makes the dystopian beauty pageant all the more frustrating is that it's become so difficult to even know which of the jobs are real. Many times, part of the reason why you're having to apply for 100+ jobs in order to get one offer is because half of the jobs that you're applying to don't even actually exist. Which brings us to Chapter 2, how job scams became the new normal.
What if I told you that at least half of the jobs you're applying to are fake job postings and that company is not hiring at all?
The jobs that you apply to on LinkedIn are probably fake. Look at all of these jobs which are not verified because they don't have the tick.
Employment scams have surged 118% in recent years, fueled by advancements in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, this is a scam. Yeah, our link was just gonna try to hack you and take all your money. Oh man.
Well, you don't know me, but I know you.
Now, not only are applicants now competing in a world where the average job listing will have thousands of candidates applying, they're also doing it in a context where many of the jobs don't exist. So let's start with the question, are the jobs on LinkedIn, including the Apply Now ones that we talked about, even real? Like many things on this channel, the answer is it's complicated. So there have been a substantial rise in what we call ghost jobs in the past few years. This is where, quote, legitimate companies are increasingly posting fake job listings, often referred to as ghost jobs. Ghost jobs are actually not scams. They're from real companies, but they are openings that don't actually exist, said Jeffrey Scott, senior content manager and hiring manager at Resume Genius. That company is not actually hiring for that role at this moment in time. They might be interested in hiring for the role in the future, or maybe they were hiring for it, but due to budget cuts, these roles were closed or put on hold. And you may be asking yourself, what is the point of businesses putting fake jobs online? Like, wouldn't it just be a waste of time to even list them in the first place? Well, again, complicated. Quote, a 2022 survey from Clarify Capital, a small business loan provider, discovered that 43% of hiring managers kept job listings open even if they didn't intend to fill the role, to give people the impression that the business was growing or to keep their current employees motivated. Other survey responses included wanting to keep a pool of applicants in case of turnover, keeping options open in case there is an irresistible applicant, or because they forgot to delete the job listing. Now, it is endlessly frustrating to have to navigate this already extremely complicated and demoralizing process while not even knowing if the job that you're applying to is real or not. So here are a few things to look out for when you're determining whether or not a job is a ghost job. 1, there is no detailed job description. 2, there is no posting date, or it was posted a long time ago. I would say anything more than a few months. Or if it's posted on a job board site, but not on the company's own website or social media.
To get an insider's opinion on the state of the job market, we spoke with Joe Pietromonaco, founder and career coach at Shape Your Fate.
By posting a ghost job, they're able to take a temperature check of like what's going on in the job market. If we were to post this job, what kind of applicant flow would we get for it? What kind of talent would be applying to it? Are we going to get the right talent that we're looking for? Is our salary competitive? And then when we are ready in the future to actually create and post this job, now we've built a pipeline. So now we already have people that we can reach out to that are interested. So it's a way of them taking like a temperature check of everything that's going on right now without actually having to commit to it.
We'll hear more from Joe later on how to navigate job hunting, take back some control, and make the most of the process. It's also worth noting that especially on LinkedIn, if you are seeing a listing for a job you suspect might not actually be real, you can also go to that company's LinkedIn and see if the position already exists, and if someone was in it previously, someone's still in it. You can generally get a sense for at least the legitimacy of a role and whether or not it might be open at this time by looking at their actual company content versus the listing. But this is sort of the better version of fake jobs in the sense that the companies at least actually exist, if not the jobs themselves. What a lot of job seekers are really having to contend with, and I will say, I get these text messages all the time as someone who's literally owned her own company for over a decade, so they must be going out like crazy to people who are job hunting, and that is the rise of completely scam job listings.
What do you think?
I think it's some kind of scam.
Oh, good, a scam.
And the most common form that these take is the rise in random text outreach prompting you to apply for remote work opportunities. So at this point, we've probably all gotten these. Someone from a number that you don't recognize reaches out to you claiming to be a recruiter from XYZ company, wanting to talk to you about a remote job that they're hiring for that you haven't applied for. And it may or may not be for a company name that you recognize. Often it is to add legitimacy to the scam, but sometimes it might just be for an unnamed or fakely named company. Either way, right away or after you reply, the person will then ask you to either share some personal information or to click a link, which is a huge red flag that this isn't actually a recruiter at all, but rather someone trying to steal your money or identity. Now, according to the FTC, here are a few tips for avoiding getting sucked in by these types of scams. 1. Start your job search with sources you know are legit. Try visiting sites like your state's job bank at Career One Stop. Do not click on links or respond to unexpected texts. If you think the text could be legit, contact the company using their website or a phone number you know is real, not the information in the text. Do your research. Search online for the name of the company and words like review, scam, or complaint. If you can't find the company online, steer clear. Block all unwanted texts. Scammers send texts designed to get your attention, and some phone settings and call blocking apps let you block unwanted text so you don't even hear from scammers in the first place. And if you spot a text scam, tell the FTC at reportfraud.ftc.gov or forward it to 7726 spam, or use your phone's report junk option to delete and report it. Essentially, with very, very rare exception, no one who is approaching you about a real life job or is an actual recruiter is just going to be randomly texting you links. Generally speaking, they'll probably reach out to you by email, and they will be someone whose references you can check, who have profiles on places like LinkedIn, who have other clients that you can speak to and cross-reference with. Just All of these scams need to go. Honestly, like, what are phone companies doing? Like, phones are becoming borderline unusable at this point. Like, this is whatever.
These jobs find you. ChatGPT will text you and email you and give you calls and say, we just came across your resume. And because of all the data they and other companies have been scraping about you during a job search, or maybe just using Facebook, they can hyper target it to you. They can say, we were recommended because you worked at, Q and P, and we would love to interview you for a position. And then they have somebody on the hook. And at that point, people might not know not to pay for an interview, or might not know not to give their social security number for a background check to a company that they don't know anything about. So I feel like I've been able to dodge a lot of those scams, but even I have been submitting for jobs that probably don't exist.
But one of the reasons that these tech scams are so prevalent and so overwhelming, especially for people who are in the job seeking process, is because so much of it is now being automated at scale by AI. Which brings us to Chapter 3, the job market's AI takeover. So as I mentioned, AI is now basically present in every aspect of the job application, interview, and hiring process. Quote, according to a recent report by Resume Now, a resume building platform, 96% of the more than 900 US hiring professionals surveyed said they used AI in recruiting tasks, such as screening and resume analysis. While the survey didn't ask respondents if they used AI specifically to conduct interviews, about 94% of those surveyed said AI screening tools effectively identify strong candidates. Roughly 73% said using AI tools has sped up the time to hire. And it's worth noting here that when you think about the considerable ethical issues when it comes to AI's ability to be neutral in issues like race or gender, or to accurately discern qualifications, you can see how putting hundreds or thousands of applications through an AI filter in the interest of it making the best, most neutral decision is compromised at best. But with the amount of AI-induced job search horror stories now available, the question then becomes, am I going to have to interview with a robot? And the answer for many people is yes. Quote, job seekers across the country are starting to encounter faceless voices and avatars backed by AI in their interviews. These autonomous interviewers are part of a wave of artificial intelligence known as agentic AI, where AI agents are directed to act on their own to generate real-time conversations and to build on responses. Talking to AI interviewers has felt very dehumanizing, said Charles Whitley, 22, a recent computer science and mathematics graduate from Santa Clara University, who's had 2 such conversations in the past 7 months. Quote, in one interview for a software engineering job, he said, the AI voice tried to seem more human by adding ums and uhs. It came across as some horror movie type stuff, Mr. Whitley said. And as I mentioned, even in the best cases, these programs are by no means neutral. They may not be human, but they were designed by humans and have all of the same shortcomings and biases that the humans who created them put into them. Quote, Matthew Bidwell, a professor of management at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, said that using AI to conduct interviews resembles older one-way video interview tools. Those recordings have usually been reviewed by a human, but now Bidwell worries that hiring managers could use AI to both screen and to evaluate the candidates, which he says feels quite alarming. Quote, the early work on these large language models does suggest that they have some kind of race and gender bias baked in. It creates a bunch of legal and ethical issues. And let's be clear that the job search process was already heavily stacked against marginalized groups, because it has been well established by a multitude of studies that unconscious bias plays a huge role in determining who is the most qualified candidate for any given position.
Recent reporting shows disproportionate federal job cuts for Black women alongside gains for white men. We'll link the source.
So if AI is going to be taking over so much of the process going forward, it's hugely important that it become a way to remove or alleviate that bias rather than just reinforce it under the guise of neutrality.
You get through that door, you're like, I did it. I practiced the dark arts and here I am. And now you are talking to yet another Gollum AI faceless thing that is speaking to you the strangest questions you've ever heard, and you have to answer it as if it's a person because you know a person will see it, or perhaps a person like the Wizard of Oz is watching from behind a screen while the robot talks for them. This is not conducive to finding good candidates. It is not conducive to understanding the job you're getting into. It is a terrible system. And the worst part is that we're going to need more AI to sort through the AI resumes and applications that candidates feel the need to make on the other end. And it's just going to be a flame war while we burn the environment, use up all of our water, trying to find people to fill jobs that they may already have had and be able to do. We are in a really dangerous state of affairs right now in the US in regards to AI. It's not better at its job. I think studies would show it has not made money for anybody. It is not better at its job than anybody else. It's like a pencil sharpener that they're giving an HR position. It's shocking. But you have to be prepared to jump through those hoops. You have to really know how these systems work. And you maybe should research how hiring is happening on the back end so you can plan around that. It's a full-time job in and of itself. I feel like an AI researcher who is now qualified to do AI research just because I wanted a job as a writer.
And on that note, it is not just the hiring process that is now being dominated by AI, and by extension, much of the HR and recruiting industries. We also have to ask ourselves, is part of the reason why the job search process is getting so difficult, especially for younger candidates, because we are in a bit of an AI job apocalypse. Now, there have been plenty of stories highlighting how AI has made it so that certain previously very stable industries are now becoming very unreliable, again, especially for newer employees. For instance, computer science and IT degrees once all but guaranteed steady jobs, but now AI is automating much of entry-level coding. As journalist Kevin Roos recently wrote for the New York Times, quote, "In interview after interview, I'm hearing that firms are making rapid progress toward automating entry-level work, and that AI companies are racing to build, quote, virtual workers that can replace junior employees at a fraction of the cost. Corporate attitudes toward automation are changing too. Some firms have encouraged managers to become AI first, testing whether a given task can be done by AI before hiring a human to do it. One tech executive recently told me his company had stopped hiring anything below an L5 software engineer, which is a mid-level title typically given to programmers with 3 to 7 years of experience, because lower-level tasks could now be done by AI coding tools. Another told me that his startup now employed a single data scientist to do the kind of tasks that required a team of 75 people at his previous company." This is a total, well, I guess it's not a side note, but this is like a personal note. My husband works in tech. I feel like he's a bit of a Cassandra figure in our house with regards to sort of seeing the incoming impact of AI. And we talk about this quite frequently because being in tech himself, he's not only very aware of the development of the technology, but also its implication on his own industry and employability. And he's basically like, I need to figure out a way to essentially be financially independent pretty soon, because a lot of the jobs are just that people like myself do are just simply going away. But part of what he does in his spare time is mentor younger people coming into the tech industries, and his advice for them has radically shifted in the past few years because, quite frankly, again, many of these jobs don't exist already anymore, and a lot more of them are going to go away in the coming years. He has a feeling of real existential dread about the tech industry that applies to himself as well. So anyway, we have a lot of late night convos on this topic. Highly recommend if you don't want to sleep afterward. But it's not just tech, and it's not just hiring. Ultimately, automation is coming for most jobs in some form or another. And it's becoming incredibly difficult to skill up into the kinds of jobs that are going to remain, or at least are still currently available, if you're not able to get those essential early years of experience, because those entry-level jobs no longer exist. And this creates a cycle of permanent insecurity where people are having to take jobs which they are way overqualified for, which brings us to our next chapter: overqualified and underpaid. Now, as someone who became an adult during the Great Recession, I can tell you that the stereotype of baristas with master's degrees is absolutely real. And it feels like we're actually now seeing both sides of that coin. Part of the reason why the job search feels so frustrating is because for many of the job hunters, they received either degrees or trainings or certifications or other skill sets that they were told essentially from birth would set them up to a good job pipeline, which now seem to mean very little, if not nothing, on the job market. And in many cases, these people went heavily into debt for the degrees that now no longer even really help them to get a job to pay that debt back. And to understand this, we first need to understand degree inflation. According to an oft-cited 2017 report from the Harvard Business School, quote, "Degree inflation, the rising demand for a 4-year college degree for jobs that previously did not require one, is a substantive and widespread phenomenon that is making the US labor market more inefficient. Postings for many jobs traditionally viewed as middle-skilled jobs, those that require employees with more than a high school diploma but less than a college degree in the United States, now stipulate a college degree as a minimum education requirement, while only a third of the adult population possesses this credential. In an analysis of more than 26 million job postings, we found that the degree gap, the discrepancy between the demand for a college degree in job postings and the employees who are currently in that job who have a college degree, is significant. For example, in 2015, 67% of production supervisor job postings asked for a college degree, while only 16% of employed production supervisors actually had one. Our analysis indicates that more than 6 million jobs are currently at risk of degree inflation. And for the record, that number has gone up. And the result of this is twofold. It's not just that people are wasting time and money on degrees that aren't actually necessary or even in some cases helpful to the jobs they're looking for. It also means that people are being filtered out for criteria that have essentially nothing to do with the job at hand. In many cases, these jobs that are listed as requiring four-year degrees are entirely comprised of skills that could theoretically be learned on the job and, by the way, used to be learned on the job. The entire concept of learning as an entry-level employee who is as much there to sort of be an apprentice to the job as they are to actually execute the job has essentially all but disappeared. And even unpaid interns, who are in many cases through their degree paying for the privilege of working at this company, are still expected to be doing more actual work than they are learning about the job itself. Quote, what this so-called degree inflation means is that smart, skilled, personable people who haven't followed the conventional college route after high school have essentially been shut out of jobs that they could have performed well, which often means that people of color who are less likely to attend college are denied an opportunity for social mobility. Meanwhile, people with college degrees are often underemployed, taking on jobs that didn't make use of their education. A full decade after receiving their bachelor's degrees, 45% of bachelor's holders are working jobs that don't require a college grad skills. So it's easy to feel gaslit because you can do everything right according to the authority figures who were telling you how to essentially navigate your early adult life and still find yourself with nothing to show for it, except, again, in many cases, a lot of debt.
I think a lot of the time you're going to find that looking overqualified is going to make it even harder to find a job because hiring managers want people who are going to stay. And you can show that you're wildly qualified. You could be obsessed with the position. It could be your dream position. But if for some reason they think you might want another job or you might be coming for their job, they're not going to hire you to that role. They don't want to hire somebody that they think is going to want more pay. This is increasingly becoming a problem, though, because a lot of people have graduate degrees that they haven't been able to use, or master's degrees for positions that don't exist anymore, or they followed the incel Reddit advice to learn to code, and that's no longer a thing anymore. There's no longer that many jobs doing that because of Copilot and Claude and all these other AI solutions. Say you're over 35, you're over 40. You also don't want to look too old because nobody wants to hire anybody who has wisdom or is seasoned or like knows themselves. They want to hire children who don't know how to ask for more than minimum wage. So you end up going through your resume and knocking down major accomplishments and creating sort of a fake curated self to give to a robot to trick a person with. And it is demoralizing. It is demoralizing to go through my resume personally, and this isn't a brag, and be like, this was a huge success, this was a huge success, this was a huge success. This is in one product category, this is in another media category, this was as a journalist, and decide I have to only show parts of myself. I have to only show a couple things I was good at in my 20s and my early 30s. It's mortifying. I should be able to go in there and say, I want this job. Look how much I have to offer. And all my years of experience have made me way more qualified and self-assured at this task than a lot of people. But I don't get to do that.
This is a little bit of a digression, but we simply cannot talk about the phenomenon of overqualified and underpaid without talking specifically about the profession of teaching here. Because in recent years, we have seen a massive attrition of qualified teachers for these positions. And we are seeing huge teacher shortages in these situations where the degrees and qualifications are inflating, but the wages are stagnating, if not falling, and are almost universally not enough to live on. Quote, according to the latest June 2025 analysis, 48 states plus the District of Columbia employed an estimated 365,967 teachers who were not fully certified for their teaching assignments. 31 states plus the District of Columbia published data on vacancies showing over 45,000 unfilled teacher positions. Together, these estimates indicate that at a minimum, 411,549 positions were either unfilled or filled by teachers not fully certified for their assignments, representing about 1 in 8 of all teaching positions nationally. Now, there are many reasons for this happening, and it's It's also happening in other industries like healthcare, for the record. But generally speaking, it is a combination of these factors we're discussing. They are not being paid enough, they are being overworked or often having to do the work of multiple people because these positions are often understaffed, and they are being required to have inflated qualifications that often in and of themselves require huge financial commitments and debt. And when you consider how much teaching has historically been a mission-driven profession, I say this as the daughter of a teacher, it is also a good reminder in this whole context that your job is not going to save you. Because when the job search process is so terrible, it basically feels like securing any job is a huge relief. And it turns just getting a job into the end game of this incredibly complicated puzzle. But ultimately, the job is just the beginning, and as we're seeing in industries like nursing and teaching, or even in things like IT, just because you get a job does not mean you will be fairly compensated, or you will have longevity at that company, or be treated with basic respect. Because for one thing, you have to keep a job in order to maintain any semblance of stability, and as we discussed earlier, with layoffs becoming more and more common, especially in the era of AI, job security is often an illusion, especially when you consider the last hired, first fired trope, which disproportionately affects younger, less experienced workers. And because the job hunt is so brutal, people overvalue the jobs themselves, expecting them to fulfill their sense of identity, stability, and self-worth.
I can get another girl to take your job in 5 minutes.
This is part of the reason why I really go out of my way to have other professional and personal projects outside of the business that I own and am the face of, because although I love what I do here, I know that over-identifying myself with any job, even a really good job, is ultimately pretty unhealthy for both just like our day-to-day mental health, but also for our ability to advocate for ourselves and accurately understand what we want professionally. When you feel grateful just to be in the room, it's difficult to negotiate, it's difficult to ask for more, it's difficult to understand what really motivates you or what you're even good at, and just generally starts to create a very negative feedback loop. But the truth is, as we've discussed here, they're lying to you about the job market. It is very easy to manipulate numbers to make things sound better or more hopeful than they actually are, and as I mentioned, some economic indicators in the first half of 2025 look good on paper. But there is something very fundamentally wrong with our job market and with how we are valuing human labor, because even if a few companies are able to make enormous profit off of this complete devaluing and decimating of the job market, eventually those chickens are coming home to roost, because mass or underemployment is not good for a society. In fact, interesting data is starting to show that the concentration, the extreme concentration of wealth at the very top of our economy, which is happening increasingly over the past 20 years, is decimating many industries, like something as simple as going out to restaurants, because when the vast majority of people can't afford to eat out, and the few people who can only eat out so many times in a given period of time, you simply don't have enough small spenders to support a healthy economy. So yes, getting rid of entire industries and seeing all the profits realized by that at the very top by shareholders or executives is going to be good for a few people, but it literally erodes the fabric of society. Now, as with many of our videos, the answers to this have to be political, and I'm going to link you in the description to a very good primer on how you can start to advocate for better employment practices, hiring practices, and workers' rights, both in given industries and at the political level.
Thanks, Roz. I know just where to stick it.
Things like unionizing and strikes, as we saw with the recent Air Canada victories, are a huge tool that is historically quite underutilized in the US. We have seen a huge decline in union power over the past 40 years, and that has been very intentional on the part of politicians who want a much more free market economy that basically just means unfettered wealth concentration at the very top and hollowing out of workers' rights. But when we think about all of the most basic rights that we achieved for ourselves as workers, they almost entirely came from organizing and political action, especially around the turn of the century. And to be very clear, although AI is a current way to do the jobs of many people without having to pay a human being, that looking at America as an example, that also used to be the way most of our economy functioned, by having an entire class of workers who were not even considered full human beings and were not compensated for their work, who were owned and operated as property, and were able to give a massive disproportionate advantage to the capital-owning class because they were able to realize the benefits of so much labor without ever having to compensate it or take it into account. I will also link you guys in the description to a very interesting video on the connection between the formerly slavery-based economy here in the US and the rise of the AI-based economy. But we also, as we always talk about on this channel, need to walk and chew gum, which means I want to talk quickly about some of the practical tips for navigating this if you find yourself currently in the job hunt.
what we work on is trying to reclaim some of that power of where you can control things throughout this process. So we're focusing on how can we polish up our resume as best as we can? What skills can we learn? Maybe there's things that we can either self-teach ourselves, or maybe there's things that we can do like online courses or certifications on so we can continue to enhance our resume. That's something we can control. Maybe we can work on our interviewing skills. We can continue to practice and just refine the way that we showcase our value to employers and how we're shining during the interview. We're looking at attending networking events, right? Those are something we can do. That's something that we can connect with people in our community and maybe even people that feel the same frustration, and we're kind of all in this together mentality.
So the job market's terrible, and landing a job isn't ultimately going to solve your life either, so what do? So you do have to be strategic with your applications, and yes, that means tailoring your resume to format to ATS systems, and you can use an online ATS checker to optimize your application formatting, such as JobScan, which we'll link below. And you must be specific and numbers-driven whenever possible. Focus your resume on hard skills, measurable results, and tailored keywords.
The hiring manager, the employer, the recruiter, they're creating the job posting for you, the job posting that you're looking at and wanting to apply to. Use that as the blueprint to guide yourself in creating your resume and tailoring it. So it's switching out bullet points for things that you've done. And that's the disclaimer here, right? Make sure you've actually done it. Don't just send someone's job description back to them. But that is such an effective way of making sure that you're being seen and showcased. That's a lot of the times why people encounter that problem of, I've sent my resume to 200 jobs and I haven't heard back yet. Okay, but are you sending the same resume to those 200 jobs, or are you tailoring it to those jobs?
And additionally, networking remains incredibly important. The majority of hires still come through referrals, and that doesn't mean you have to, but even building weak ties via LinkedIn connections, professional groups, alumni networks, etc., is much more effective than cold applications. And when you apply for a job, do not be scared off from reaching out to the hiring manager directly. Most want to see candidates take initiative.
So I always recommend take maybe an hour a day, half an hour a day, and start reaching out to people. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn. You can look for events that you can attend for your specific profession. You can look at how you can start building some of these relationships. Even if it's not, hey, connect me with this job. Even if you just send a message to them and say, hey, I noticed we're in the same profession, would love to connect. Or, hi, I noticed you work at so-and-so company. I would love to work there one day, would love to connect and stay involved and hear more about the organization. The more you can build this network and this connection, the more you start expanding your reach. And that really does make a difference when it comes to getting through the job market.
You might be in a full crisis looking for a job at the beginning of July, and everyone you know is on vacation. And you have to be the friend that says, I can't go on vacation, and I need you to take a break from your vacation and bother a bunch of people you know and just help me because I'm desperate. And someone might do that for a little bit and they don't come up with any leads, but you don't know how much they did it. So then 3 weeks later, you're back saying, hey, is there anything else? And that's who you become. And I just want you to know that you are more than your job search. You are more than the way that the AI would sort you algorithmically as a person. You are more than the struggles that you face. You have to do something right now that is humbling if you don't put it into perspective.
You also want to practice skill stacking, which means instead of highlighting one perfect skill in your career or job search, combine complementary ones like data literacy and communication that can make your profile stand out. We'll link to a resource that goes into much more depth on this. And lastly, as much as possible, protect yourself while job hunting. Financially, this means an emergency fund, utilizing gig or bridge jobs, and avoiding predatory scams. But you also need to protect your mental health, so normalize detaching your identity from work by exploring meaning outside of your employment. That means hobbies, community, and non-monetized activities.
I know it is such a trite thing to say. It is so easy to say, but you have to try to make your own opportunities. You have to look for angles. You have to keep your mind working. What is the unique thing I can do? And if you have to do gig work, like say you have to do a delivery or ride sharing, that can be a great solution short term, but just remember that those companies are trying to trap you in those roles. So while you're doing that, I would balance it with something that may give you more of a growth opportunity, because subsistence can exhaust you.
From the candidate perspective as well, there's also the opportunity that by the time you get through this interview process, you might have already found another job. So from an employer perspective, you also run the risk of actually losing your top candidates and the talent that you want by the end of this interview process. Like I always tell hiring managers, if someone is talented enough that you want to interview them, they're talented enough that someone else does as well. In a perfect world, yes, there wouldn't be long interview processes. And it is up to you as a candidate to figure out, is this job worth this interview process and this experience? So that is up to you to determine. If you do figure out that this is a job that you really want, and you want to go through this long song and dance, then we focus on where we can get value in the process so that we take back a bit of control there. So we make sure that of all, as we're meeting with everybody and their grandmother in the organization, we focus on creating interview questions for each specific person so that we're getting their perspective. We're learning more about the job. We're learning more about the company and their culture. We are focusing on, like, if we have to do a presentation or, a project for them as part of the interview process, then we're focusing on, okay, we'll shift the mindset. This project is going to give us a little bit more insight into the type of work we're going to be doing. Is this the type of work we want to do? Now we get a little bit more perspective on the company. Even just a company that makes you jump through 17 hoops, that now says a little bit more about the organization itself as well. So now we're getting more information about the company. And I try to frame the mindset that way of, this is all information so that you can figure out, is this the right company that you want to work for?
Ultimately, the job market has changed forever, and we are well aware of that at TFD and are also well aware at how effectively we can gaslight ourselves by focusing on the few economic indicators that actually are doing well to pretend as if we are not seeing this enormous hollowing out of the middle class and of the jobs that make a middle class life possible. And in light of things like the rise of AI, this can feel really scary. Again, it's something I talk about with my husband all the time, who, despite being a very desirable, highly compensated tech worker, is very existentially scared for the future of his industry and his own employability. But it also means that much of our classic advice here at TFD remains evergreen. Maintaining and building on your skill set, diversifying your income streams, depending less on consumerism so your life is more affordable, and finding joy and fulfillment mainly outside of work. Because success is not about just getting the job. It is about building resilience, financial stability, and personal value outside of institutional validation. But as always, thank you for watching this month's video here at The Financial Diet. Good luck in your searches, and I'll see you back here in October. Bye.